The night before the strike, Israeli military commanders made sure their cars were not parked in their usual spots outside headquarters in Tel Aviv. That detail, so small, so deliberate, tells you everything about what kind of war this was before it even started. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury against Iran. In the opening hours, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed at the National Security Council offices in Tehran, struck by an Israeli airstrike while he was above ground, in broad daylight, meeting with the inner circle of a government that had no idea the attack was coming. His daughter, son-in-law, grandchild, and daughter-in-law were killed alongside him. By the end of that first day, Iranian Defense Minister Aziz Naserzadeh, IRGC Commander Mohammad Pakpour, Defense Council Secretary Ali Shamkhani, and 4 senior Ministry of Intelligence officials were confirmed dead. The IDF would later state it had killed 7 senior security leaders in those opening strikes alone. 40 Iranian officials, according to intelligence sources who briefed journalists that evening, were killed in total. Though authorities were not clear whether they had died in one location or several. Pause on that. The supreme leader of a nation of 90 million people, surrounded by the most fortified security apparatus in the region, was killed in his own capital city, in a building he was in by appointment, at a time he felt safe enough to hold a scheduled meeting in daylight. The question is not whether Israel had the intelligence to find him. It is how they found him, and crucially, how they made sure he did not know he had been found. The Mossad had access to the electronic devices of Khamenei's inner circle for nearly 2 decades. They also controlled the mobile communications towers near the compound, which allowed them to deny outgoing cell signals at the critical moment, delaying early warning until the last possible second. ORF online, that is signals intelligence used not to listen, but to silence. To remove the ability of the target to warn itself. Israel had also hacked Tehran's extensive network of surveillance cameras, turning the city's own eyes against its government, allowing intelligence officers to monitor Khamenei's pattern of life in the weeks leading up to the strike. ORF online. The night before, American warplanes were deliberately parked in southern Israel. The planes were positioned there to distract Iran, which may have been tracking movements through Chinese satellite imagery. While the actual strike package was being prepared at Ramat David Air Base in the north. NPR Iran was watching the wrong signal. The threat came from the direction they were not looking. This is a concept worth naming precisely. Deception in signals intelligence is not about generating no signal. It is about generating the right signal in the wrong place, and ensuring the enemy cannot tell the difference until it is too late. Israel did not hide its movements. It manufactured a version of its movements that pointed south, while the actual attack launched from the north. The strike came from elsewhere. In the weeks before the attack, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff brought Trump a WhatsApp message from Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, along with a written assurance from President Masoud Pezeshkian, in an effort to persuade him to delay a strike on Iran. Israel Hayom. The day before the bombs landed, Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi announced that a breakthrough had been reached in nuclear negotiations, that Iran had agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium and to accept full IAEA verification. He said peace was within reach. Talks were expected to resume on March 2. They did not resume. Diplomatic officials with knowledge of the Iran talks said Witkoff had undermined the negotiations by misrepresenting a key exchange. Wikipedia. Witkoff said Iran had insisted on its right to enrich uranium and boasted that its 460 kilograms of 60% enriched material could produce 11 nuclear bombs. The Omani foreign minister said negotiations had been actively and seriously progressing. Both statements cannot be fully true. One framing opened the door to war. The other was trying to close it. A few days before the attack, senior advisors for the Trump administration said it would be better if Israel strikes Iran first, so that the United States would have a better justification for going to war after Iran retaliates. Wikipedia. The sequencing of justification was being designed. The intelligence picture was the entry point. The diplomatic picture was the exit they built the wall in front of. Within the first week of the war, Israeli Air Force Chief of Staff Major General Eyal Zamir stated that Israeli pilots had conducted approximately 2,500 strikes and used over 6,000 munitions. By March 5, the IDF had rendered over 300 Iranian ballistic missile launchers inoperable. Critical threats by day 10. Iranian missile and drone attacks on Israel had dropped by more than 90%, a steeper reduction than anything achieved during the 2025 12-day war. Wikipedia, which itself had failed to produce anything close to a definitive outcome. The calculus had changed. The scale had changed. But the targeting of Iran's missile infrastructure had been built on the same intelligence architecture that located Khamenei. Surveillance cameras, penetrated communications networks, AI-fused pattern-of-life tracking, human agents who provided what machines could not, the knowledge that Khamenei felt least vulnerable in daylight, and that he had gathered his entire senior staff into one building on that particular morning. Concerns about Israeli hacking have since forced Iran's national security apparatus to return to slower, analog mechanisms. Systems more resistant to interception but wholly outpaced by the speed of modern warfare. ORF Online. The practical result is a command structure that has partially disconnected itself from the electronic networks it once relied on, and in doing so has created a gap between the interim government in Tehran and the rank and file of the IRGC on the ground, units now operating, Iran's own foreign ministry has admitted, on old general instructions, without real-time guidance from above. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that his country's military intelligence has irrefutable evidence that Russia has been providing signals intelligence to Iran, using its own electronic and satellite capabilities to feed data to Tehran. The Times of Israel. Russia, which shares with Iran a strategic interest in fracturing American power projection in the Middle East, was watching too. What it could see and pass along, it did. What Iran could do with that information, given the fragmented state of its own internal communications, is a separate question. By March 17, Israel killed Ali Larijani, the man Khamenei himself had designated as the key decision-maker in the event of his death. On March 17, the IRGC announced its cluster warhead strike on Ramat Gan, in which 2 residents in their 70s were found dead just outside their safe room, a few feet from safety. A statement from the IRGC called their deaths revenge for Larijani and his companions. Wikipedia. Each death generating the justification for the next. By March 27, the Israeli Air Force had dropped over 13,000 bombs on Iranian regime and military sites, and Israeli defense officials were warning that strikes would intensify in the coming days. The Times of Israel. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 1/5 of all globally traded oil passes, remained functionally closed to American and Israeli allied shipping. 15 vessels passed through over a 48-hour window, many of them taking unusual routes through Iranian territorial waters, with defense analysts suggesting that mine avoidance corridors were being quietly negotiated between Tehran and individual shipping companies. Santa Clarita Valley Signal. Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi had been exchanging messages with Witkoff through the Signal app even during active hostilities, according to reporting from Channel 12 The Times of Israel, while publicly denying any interest in talks or a truce. The channel that was supposedly closed was being used. The channel that appeared to be open was partly theater. That is the architecture of this conflict as it stands today. Signal and counter-signal. Deception layered over deception, diplomatic messages traveling through encrypted apps while the bombs continue to fall. Iran's interim leadership is internally fractured, its missile capacity reduced by more than 90%, its supreme leader dead in a building he thought was safe. Israel and the United States have dropped over 13,000 bombs in less than a month. The Strait of Hormuz is contested, the region's financial capitals have absorbed drone strikes, and a war that was preceded by a diplomatic breakthrough that everyone agreed was within reach has produced, in 4 weeks, somewhere north of 5,000 Iranian military deaths. What no one has yet explained is how Oman's foreign minister and America's envoy were in the same negotiation and came away with incompatible accounts of what had been agreed. And whose version of that signal it was that determined whether diplomacy lived or died.